All right. Well, this week we have our fourth installment of the Lunchbox Roundtable. This one we have Trevor Gooby, who's the senior VP of Ballpark Operations for the Seattle Mariners. With kind of on topic with some of the other stuff that we talked about with different industries and how everybody's adapting to this. Obviously, ballparks, sports, any really large venue like this is going to be something that people are pretty they're looking forward to, but a lot of people understand this is probably going to be a little bit further out. So I guess as we kind of open it up, Trevor, do you mind kind of telling us what you do on a daily basis for the Mariners and kind of what's a day in their life look like for you?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on this. So I work for the Seattle Mariners here. I get to oversee T-Mobile Park, which is our ballpark here in downtown Seattle. Uh, Operations, it's hard to explain sometimes what ballpark operations are, but I kind of joke with people that ask me what I do is if you're a fan coming to a ballpark, once you walk into the ballpark, my world basically is everything outside of the players on the field. So security, housekeeping, facility maintenance, capital projects, guest relations, all the non-baseball events that we have in the ballpark, trying to bring those to the fans. Um, the general day-to-day operations of what it takes to run the ballpark. We have about 1,500 plus employees here that assist in that, and it's a fun job. I miss doing my normal job right now as we are shut down, but it's a great job, and I've been in baseball since 1998, working for a handful of teams, and love working here in Seattle, and just love being part of the community here in this area.
Great. Well, and we appreciate you spending the time to do this. I think one of the questions that I had was going to be, in a typical baseball game, say you have a sold out crowd, what is kind of, the number of employees it takes from, like you said, from the second you walk into the ballpark, everything that it takes to run the game, all the retail, all parts of facilities. So about 1,500 employees.
Yeah, we have about 1,500 seasonal employees. Our front office is about 200 plus employees that are work here in our front office. Everything from sales and marketing, community relations, operations, and then the majority of those are the 1,500 are the seasonal employees that without them we really couldn't operate the ballpark. So all the ushers, ticket takers, concession stand workers, all those folks help get this place running. We're a 24-hour facility, 7 days a week in season. So without them, we wouldn't be able to operate.
And, with everything going on now, what sort of things are you looking forward to getting back to? And, with a lot of what we see, we deal a little bit with restaurants, we deal with retail, we deal with hospitality, we deal with grocery. In the ballpark, it's unique because you're bringing together all these aspects of different types of retail. So is there a way, especially moving forward post-COVID, are you looking at different ways to manage all of these different retail units to do them safely? I mean, what goes into learning about all those different industries really under one roof?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've definitely been looking at a lot of different things, knowing that our operations is going to change drastically. The days of, we hate lines, obviously, here inside the ballpark because people standing in line, it takes them away from watching the game. But like any ballpark that you've been to, there's going to be lines. So we try to do our best line management, but things like that, how does it look moving forward once we're able to welcome fans back in the ballpark? If it's concession stands, if it's our merchandise kiosks, if it's these fun group areas that we've have built out over the past few years. So we're really looking at all parts of the operation right now. We have a team of about 30 plus people that are researching best practices from sporting venues, entertainment venues, restaurants, retail, The hard thing right now is I don't know if anyone knows exactly what's the best practice. And so we're all trying to put together what look like the best practices and studying those things. And then really relying on our local county health department as we vet some of these things, having great conversations with them as well as the other sport teams in town. Ultimately, we want to get back to normal as fast as possible. But we also realize that we need to make sure that people are safe when they come to our venue. One of the things we've said for years, our kind of mantra here, is clean, safe, and friendly ballpark. And so I think that we have to double down on that effort moving forward. And I mean, we were saying that for years. That's always how we set ourselves apart. But now that is going to be something that is going to be even more critical for us to look at. So, when we're cleaning the ballpark, all the high touch areas, things in the past that you've taken for granted, if it's the elevators or the restrooms or things like that, really focusing on that. Again, focusing on what does concessions look like moving forward inside a venue. Is it grab and go? Is it ordering your seats? Really great conversations that we're having right now. I wish I had the answers today, but
Sure.
Unfortunately, I think the way things are trending right now, we're going to have a little bit more time to figure out what those answers are before we're able to welcome fans back into our ballpark.
I think that's an interesting thing you said too, because you're just giving people the confidence that it is safe. They're going to want to see cleaning happening. They're going to want to know that it's clean and not just, believe, or feel that it is in some other way. They're going to want to actually see the cleaning being done, or see, wipes and hand sanitizer, all this stuff that's, kind of already being done. But, and I think that's also the $1 billion question is, when does everything get back to normal? And I know from when we talked last week, you're looking at some different things of, Major League Baseball is looking at the South Korean Baseball League as kind of a benchmark to see how they're doing things. Is there anything that they're doing now in particular that you're already adopting to try to get baseball, even just to be able to be on TV, even if we're not talking fans in the stands? What sort of measures are you learning from them already?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because South Korea was able to start their baseball league, I believe, a week ago, and Taiwan was able to start playing baseball games maybe 3 weeks ago, and then just this week they started allowing fans back into the stadium. So it's been really interesting. We obviously, being a Major League Baseball team, we have a lot of contacts throughout the world, and reaching out to our scouting department and contacts with those leagues to ask them how they're doing certain things. A lot of it is on testing their players on a regular basis, also talking to the business departments about how they're doing certain things with and without fans. It's interesting because, I started watching some of the games on television, the Korean Baseball League games on TV, and you never think, how do you operate a game in an empty stadium? Do you need to pipe in crowd noise? Do you need to, even though it's a made for television thing, like, you need to still figure out those things. So we're having those conversations. It's been, I think, a lot of fun for us to share some ideas with people that we wouldn't have talked to in the past, and understand what they're doing. It's kind of crazy. Our marketing department has been talking to them about cardboard cutout fans. That was one thing
I saw that the other day.
they had. And so our guys have said, hey, if we can't allow fans in the stadium, maybe that's something that we can do. So we're talking to them about that, really understanding the high touch cleaning and sanitization of the stadium. That's probably been, again, my biggest focus. A lot of what we're going to be able to do or need to do will be dictated from Major League Baseball, as well as the local officials, health officials here in town. So protocols of how many people we can allow in, cleanliness, things like that, the testing, obviously. So we're kind of waiting right now to hear some of those things and trying to gather as much information so we're ready for that.
Sure. And so I know it's probably pretty hard to put a timeline on anything like this, but even to look at South Korean baseball, what are some of the things that they're doing even to allow fans in? And that might give us an idea of, phase one of even just a few fans being able to go into the ballpark. What might that look like? And if I was a fan walking into a ballpark, what are some of the things that I might see?
Yeah, so some of the things that we've been talking about with them, they're doing some thermal scanning. I'm not sure how that will go here, and every state is different, and every city and county is different, so not really sure how that will work here. I think on a timeline, again, every state's going to be different, but in a perfect world, we are hopefully being able to have some sort of activity for our players, because that's going to be the first thing, is our guys are going to have to start training again. We're hopeful that we're able to start doing that in June, sometime in June, and then potentially some games in a perfect world sometime this summer. I think a lot of people have probably seen articles in the media, a lot of speculation. There's not a finalized plan yet, but we're very hopeful that there's going to be some games. My guess is that it's going to roll out with no fans to start, and then again, depending on state by state, what is going to be approved and not approved, we'll slowly be able to have fans. But I think the thought of having a packed house of, we seat almost 50,000 people here at our ballpark. To have 50,000 people, I think that's a long way off. We're going to have to practice talking to health officials. We're going to have to practice social distancing practices inside the ballpark. So what does that look like? Is that every other row? Is that timed? One thing that we talked about, time ticketing entry. And so it's kind of we've never had to do that before. So when you purchase your ticket, maybe you also are purchasing a time that you can enter the stadium at a certain gate. So that's an interesting concept. So that would fix the overcrowdedness on getting people in. Then we still need to figure out what does it look like to get people out of the stadium. Probably limited concessions type of operations. And again, like we talked about briefly, is that a grab and go type of thing? Is it a order at your seat? So, there's things like that that we're figuring out, and navigating the ballpark. Social distancing is going to be a unique challenge. We have concourses that, get crowded. So how do you fix that? It's one thing that we did this off season. We spent about $10 million on capital renovations here at the stadium to upgrade some areas. And the trend in sports over the past few years is these gathering spaces. People want to hang out together. They want to, sit with their friends, or company outings, or birthday parties, family gatherings, things like that. So, we are finishing these projects, and they're big gathering spaces, fun spaces that people can rent out. Unfortunately, those are spaces that are not going to be able to be used for, a foreseeable future until we have some sort of vaccine. And so it's tough that we want to have people come out to the ballpark. We want them to have fun. But we're definitely going to have to see and follow these social distancing practices to make sure that people are safe once they're allowed to come out here.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And back to what you said about pumping in crowd noise too. What does this look like, and what does it look like in many different ways? That's one of them. That's, I guess, as you guys know pretty well too. The Seahawks have the 12th man thing.
Yep.
And fans and home field advantage is a huge thing. You want to be there, you want to be loud. While the opposing pitchers, whatever, the crowds influence the game in some way. So to not have that, that's going to be weird for the players too. I'm sure you do play in another ballpark. You're not at home sleeping in your own bed, but at the same time, it's going to be pretty quiet. So
yeah,
that's
it really is. you know, years ago, I worked in the minor leagues, and we had a league called the Gulf Coast League. It's where all the players end up starting, but you play in Florida in the middle of the day at 12 o'clock. And, you know, in Florida in the summer at 12 o'clock is 100 and something degrees. So if you had, and you played on the practice fields in the back of your spring training academy or complex. So if you had 10 people watching your games, that was a lot. So, you know, it was dead silent all the time. I mean, and it was kind of eerie. You'd see these, you know, players and they'd be out there playing and there was no crowd cheering. Or, so it's, I think for a while it's probably going to be like that, but we have some really smart people on our entertainment side of things, and you know, kicking around ideas about scoreboards or music. You know, do you play walk-up music for all the players still? Things like that they're starting to think about, trying to come up with some ideas, because you want to make it, once we're allowed to have games again, you're going to want to make it a good product for people to watch on TV. So it may also give Major League Baseball an opportunity to be real innovative and, you know, come up with some ideas about, you know, I think you might have seen it during spring training where they started miking up players in game, and the commentators were talking to outfielders or hitters or, you know, things like that, you know, for years people have said baseball is, you know, slow and, you know, really monotonous and, you know, without a home run, there's not a lot of action. So maybe this gives, you know, baseball an opportunity to get really creative. And if it's different ways to speed up the game, if it's different ways to, you know, get youth involved and make it really fun for people to watch on TV, it's, you know, I try to be a real optimistic person and look at things and say, okay, are there ways that we can innovate and change things so it's not always the way we've done it in the past? And maybe this is going to give us an opportunity, and maybe not everything will work, but it will give us an opportunity to try some different things that we've been wanting to try for a while.
That's a good point too. I think most fans that go to a game of any sort, they realize how much goes into making that experience a quality one. And whether you're, you know, a father bring your son to their first baseball game, or, you know, you're just going because of all these different things that, you know, there's a lot beyond just the game that people go and enjoy about the ballpark. And that was something I thought early on must be difficult, is that, you know, it shut down so quickly for everybody, but especially for the NBA and MLB. They seem to shut it down real quickly. And, you know, being a little kid, you know, if I'm about to start my first year of Little League or something like that, and that's off the plate, and you don't have baseball, you don't have sports, and it's something that people look forward to so much. Is, you know, it's something that people just do because they enjoy it. You know, they might not go to a game every single night, every single week by any means, but it's that one thing that you know you really look forward to. It's like going to a concert or something like that. So I guess kind of going back to the beginning, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what were those first few days like when you were hearing the developments of COVID in the U.S. and trying to track this thing to say, well, baseball season's about to start. This is what the MLB is doing. This is what the NBA is doing. You know, what were those conversations and the escalation like in those very first few days there?
Yeah, it was, you know, it's kind of surreal when you think about it. It's only like 2 months ago now, and it feels like it's so long ago that this has hit us. Obviously, Seattle has been kind of at the forefront of it, and so, you know, early to late February, we were starting to hear some rumblings about this disease that was hitting, or virus that was hitting, and you know, we started making some very preliminary plans in late February, and then it was funny. I was down in spring training and in Arizona, Peoria, Arizona, on the 28th, 29th of February, flying back to Seattle on the 1st, and it was that day that it really started breaking news here in Seattle with the assisted living center in Kirkland, which is about 10 miles maybe here from the ballpark, maybe even less. And so I think that was a big wake up call for all of us that something is changing quickly. And, we talk about it down in Arizona, and, the news hadn't been there, and people weren't really paying it too much attention to it. And then, we were started having meetings pretty regularly, leaning on our health officials, understanding what was going on. And, you know, we were still very naive to it, thinking, okay, we're going to probably just suspend our first homestand. We were going to open up March 26th. So our plans were to play our first homestand down in Arizona. And then, once that, figured it was going to be over after a week, and then be able to play back here the second homestand. So we, quickly we're having those conversations. And then by early March, the 7th or 8th, I think all of us realized that this wasn't going away quickly. So a lot of preparations in changing, logistics of players. I mean, that was probably the biggest thing. I mean, we were still getting ready for opening day. So we had some things to do here in the stadium, but we didn't have a lot of activity yet in the ballpark. All of our stuff was still happening in Arizona, our spring training. So needing to communicate with the players of shutting down spring training, which is a massive operation between minor league players and major league players, hundreds of players, sending them all home, telling them they can't work out, getting everyone home safely internationally, all that. And then just kind of understanding like when we're allowed to get them going again. And then, like a lot of businesses on the business side is, we were not set up for a work from home type of situation. So those 200 employees that were coming to work every day in their getting ready for opening day, probably our busiest time of the year, getting them up and running for what work from home looks like. Again, hopefully thinking it was a short amount of time. And we've been now work from home since March, I'm looking at my calendar, March 13th or so, March somewhere in there, early. And now understanding what does work from home look like. Some departments, it's been very, very effective and efficient. Other departments, it's been a challenge, especially in my world, ballpark operations. It's really hard to say a tradesman in our maintenance department. It's really hard for you to say, hey, you can't come to work, but we have HVAC systems that need to be managed and maintained, or our security department where we have 24/7 security here. So it's been a learning process for a lot of people. It's going to change the way we operate. I think even once we have a vaccine and we're out of this, some departments may have more of a work from home situation moving forward. And some people think it's very, very effective, and it has been for certain groups. And so, yeah, it's been, again, I think maybe because we were on the front line of it pretty early on, we were receiving a lot of phone calls and questions from our colleagues and friends from around sports and around the country asking, what are you guys doing? How are you doing this? The city of Seattle and the state of Washington has really done an amazing job, keeping everything contained as well as they can. Our number has flattened off relatively quickly. And it was one of those things where, without knowing what this was going to be, I think it was some really scary times. And fortunately, it has leveled off. We didn't have the surge at the hospitals that they were expecting, so that has been great. But on the flip side, we've also been shut down now since early March, and they're stay-at-home orders now through June 1st. So we're going to slowly start phasing back after June 1st, but I think we have a long haul to go.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think a lot of people were pretty skeptical in the beginning, and when there was talk of seasons being canceled like this, it was like I think a lot of people felt it seemed like an overreaction. But you being in Seattle, other people may not have seen that, so you're seeing it firsthand there in the city, in the state of Washington. So in hindsight, of course, that was all completely the right decision to make, even though it was, I'm sure, extremely difficult because
Yeah.
you don't know if you're overreacting or if you can somehow figure out a way to make the baseball season work through this. But
Yeah, it's really interesting because our opening day was supposed to be March 26th, and I think about it, and if this was 2 weeks later, or even a week later, we potentially would have been playing on March 26th with our largest crowd of the year, and what impact that potentially could have made on everybody. Or, figure 15 ballparks across the country potentially would have had opening day on March 26th, and how much worse it could have been with these large group gatherings. And it's very fortunate that we were all able to make this decision. As painful as it was to not have opening day, it's one of my favorite days of the year, and we work so hard in the off season to get going, and everyone has a chance to win the World Series on opening day, and it's one of those things where
right.
it's just a great day. You get through the winter, and you have this spring, and then you're ready to hope springs eternal, as they say. And again, it was very disappointing to not be able to do it, but hindsight, like you said, Ben, I'm glad that we didn't have it, because the numbers would have been even more through the roof. And it's just very fortunate that we were able to shut down before it got worse.
Yeah, that's good. And nobody wants to be the one who set the whatever venue that is for that to flourish in any way. So health of everybody is definitely continues to be the concern.
Mm-hmm.
Back in December when Joe and I came and we visited you real quick, you guys had the I forget what you called it, but the whole winter wonderland holiday theme thing set up there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'll be able to do sooner than baseball, a smaller scale events where it's easier for people to be spread out? Are there any other events that the Mariners are looking at hosting, or the ballpark in general is looking at hosting?
Sure. So, that's a good question. We, for years we were 81 baseball games, and that was basically it. But as the business has evolved, we've realized that this is a venue where people want to come out and use it. It's a great opportunity for companies or venues, or groups to host their events here. So we are pretty active. We're, like I mentioned earlier, we're 365 days a year. There's something going on. We had a pretty heavy schedule for 2020. Unfortunately, most events, at least through the summer, have started to reschedule into 2021, just because it's unknown right now of what's going to be allowed. We do have 3 large concerts that are still right now on the books, but we work with our partner Live Nation to kind of understand what that looks like. And again, their world is completely changing as well. So understanding what that looks like. And as those still are a couple months off, and I think all of us are crossing our fingers that something miraculous will happen. But if it doesn't, then we have to make plans for relocating those events. Also, we do a huge Christmas event here, talking to those guys of what does their event look like. And so trying to understand, that's not until November and December. So again, hopefully we have some better ideas. So those are the big ones. The smaller events, we're still hopeful that we're able to do those once we're allowed to open up, and understanding what those events are and how they are able to have social distancing and following the health county, the regulations. So yeah, everything's just kind of up in the air right now, which is a little nerve-wracking, obviously for our financial team, because it's huge revenue for us to bring in. So yeah, we're trying to figure that out. Right now, the main focus that we have is getting baseball back here with no fans. That's from our owner and Major League Baseball. That's our priority right now, is how do we safely operate the ballpark, keep the players safe, and when we're allowed to be able to have games without fans. That's number one priority. And then the other events, those will slowly roll in, again, hopefully later this summer and into the fall.
Well, that's good to hear. I know, with heading into summer and also just with everybody being quarantined in some way over the last few months, everybody's itching to get out and do things. So, with baseball, with concerts, like you mentioned, they're just things that people love to get out and do and enjoy, especially during the summertime. So, I know we're kind of running out of time here, but, we appreciate you walking us through everything. I think people love to hear about this and, about what baseball is doing, what sports are doing, just with everybody else too. It sounds like you're figuring it out as you go. And, unfortunately, nobody has all the answers on what this is going to look like even a week from now, So, it's good to look forward to different things that maybe other markers that kind of tell us the way that, this is going. And when you look at South Korea, when you look at concert venues or, you look at other sporting events going on across the world, it kind of maybe helps us understand better what's coming in our direction, what we can expect in the future. But, even with those models, it sounds like it's going to be pretty hard to really predict what's coming.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard, but, as we've been going through this, I've been more encouraged about it. And I think that's probably what I would leave you with is that, yeah, it's going to be hard to do this, but, we're going to be able to figure out a way. It may not be the same as, you and I have gone out and seen a baseball game, 2 years ago, last season. But we're going to be able to get back and to get going again. I think that's the part that's encouraged me. I think by, early April, I was, as soon as opening day was canceled, it was pretty tough on all of us here in the office. But as we're starting to end up figuring this out, I think it's been something that's brought our organization even together more. We have, all these people working on a common goal of getting this back up and running, keeping people safe, like what we talked about. So that part has been really encouraging to me. Hearing from our ownership group, also hearing from people about how important it is for them to come out and to gather together and to kind of pull behind our team and sports. And I guess the last thing, and hopefully we don't run out of time when I tell you this, we've been able to utilize the ballpark for non-traditional baseball ways and be able to help the community. And so I think that's something else that's been great. We're currently hosting a blood drive here inside the ballpark, which has been awesome. Early on, we were one of our partners, Bloodworks Northwest, reached out to us, and they said how much of a critical need they needed for blood. And so originally it was supposed to be a 2-day blood drive. And then that 2-day turned into a week, turned into a month. Now it's over 2 months. We've had almost 1,600 people come out. And it showed that we can socially distance and do a blood drive, keep people safe. So I think that's been really encouraging to me. We've had partners come out and support it, and it's been this huge, big community drive here in Seattle. The Seahawks, the Sounders, all the teams have supported it. And then actually this week, we just volunteered our parking garage, and we're going to be set up for a free COVID-19 test site where people can drive through. We're partnered with Kroger grocery stores and the Seattle Fire Department, and up to 250 people a day are going to be able to come through, get a free COVID test, stay in their car, get it administered by a pharmacist. And so things like that where, those are the things that encourage me. Maybe we're not playing baseball, but we're able to be a good partner here in the community and pull together. And when we're all done, really with all of this and we're back to normal, really look back at it and say, this was a really tough time for everybody, but we all pulled together and we got through it. And so those are the things that, make me feel good. And I know our organization is really proud of being part of, a small part of it, but Yeah, so that's kind of where we are today.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it all up. And I think that's something too that's going to come out of this. All across the U.S., people are more focused on the things that really matter most, and especially the local communities, the local businesses. So for the Mariners to be able to play still that key place in this whole thing is, I think, super cool. So I appreciate you sharing that, but I think too, people really like hearing what you're doing to keep everybody safe. And I know everybody's looking forward to getting back to especially sports. So on that, Trevor, we appreciate you spending some time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. Appreciate
Catching us
it.
up and everything.
Awesome.